kind of thing, yeah. And to your point on this, these were kind of adult stores that were located around the church. And sometimes they would have paraphernalia. There may have been other things that were going on too. And what you found was that they would have busy nights on Fridays and Saturdays. There would be condoms and drug needles and naked pictures and different things, pee-pees and wee-wees, all over the church parking lot. And the church went to the business and said, hey, can you clean this up? This is not something that people want to see when they're going to church. The business refused. So they began to kind of attack these businesses, and they began to take pictures of the cars in front of the establishments. Just thought you'd like to know that there's a church in the neighborhood. And then they would mail them home. And a couple of things. One, it was probably designed to embarrass them a little bit because the establishment wouldn't do anything. If people knew that other people knew that they were going to these things, then they'd be less likely to go. Number two, if they had a significant other that didn't know and got a hold of these pictures, you kind of see where problems would come about there. The gentleman, the pastor, what happened to him?
He was elected mayor.
He was elected mayor overwhelmingly because people were very, very excited, in fact, about what it was that he was doing. Texas cheerleaders, just really quick. Anything jump out? What high school was it? Kuntz High School in Texas. What was it that the cheerleaders were doing?
They had like their football sign, like that the players run through.
Yeah.
And like if God can, something about God, and it was like the Christian God.
Something about God. If God is for us, then who can be against us? And they would unfurl these banners right before the team would run out onto the field. And who complained? Does anyone remember who complained?
A group in Michigan.
Group from Wisconsin, yes, like Michigan, Wisconsin. Freedom from Religion Foundation. They basically said that the church, the school was imposing a religion. The school was imposing a religion on the people that went to that game. You had cheerleaders in their school uniforms at a school event on school grounds with ginormous banners that dealt with assorted Christian biblical scriptures. What was the argument of the cheerleaders?
They paid for it.
They paid for it. What else?
Wasn't school money.
What's that?
Wasn't school money.
Okay, they paid for it. It wasn't school money. What else?
Freedom of speech.
They did actually argue freedom of speech. They didn't get into religion. They focused on speech. They basically said, listen, we are making these banners. It's our own free will. We're just exercising our freedom of speech. We're sharing what our views are. They said, we paid for this on our own. Nobody pressured us. We made these signs on our own free will. And ultimately, they won when they went to court. And it's funny because the community was very much in favor. Not only was the community in favor, but if you remember on this, other schools began to put up these banners as well. The cheerleaders had basically said, we're not trying to tell people that they're going to hell or damnation or things like this, but we're just trying to kind of get people excited and get people together about what the team is getting ready to do. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, for the church in Texas, case who won?
There wasn't really a lawsuit, but it's like Gloria said, and I don't think I hammered on this. They took pictures of the cars, they ran the license plates, and license plates are part of public record, so it was perfectly legal to do. And then they got their addresses, and then in fact they mailed these off to them. So there wasn't a case, but it was immensely popular, and then the guy ultimately was elected mayor. Going back to the terms, let's jump into chapter 2 now that you've had a chance to think about it. Anything jumping out from chapter 2 right off the top?
Article 6.
What's that?
Article 6.
There were two parts to Article 6. One part of this actually came from your first scenario, and one part came from class. Do y'all remember what those two parts were?
There's no religious oath required for a public official.
Woo! Yeah, there's no religious oath that is required as a condition to take a public office in the United States. And that part is the only part that dealt with religion in the original Constitution. The First Amendment came later. It wasn't part of the original. Do you remember what the second part was? Go ahead. Supremacy Clause. Any part of the any law that is contrary to the Constitution has got to yield. This is a violation of the Supremacy Clause because the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Go ahead, Levi.
So the first part pretty much like separates like religious oath like from politics, and the second part is like excuse me, it's like the separation of like the branches of government?
The second part was really one of the first times that they said that the federal government was actually going to be able to control the states.
Okay.
That's the significance on that second part. What else? Go ahead, read.
Wait, I thought the supremacy clause was Article 10.
No, there's a 10th Amendment, but there is no Article 10. It's actually just Article 6. It's Article 6. What else have y'all got? Go ahead. What was the ERA?
Equal Rights Amendment?
Equal Rights Amendment. Did it pass?
No.
Do you remember what Equal Rights Amendment dealt with?
Providing equal rights for both men and women.
Discrimination. It forbid basically discrimination on account of sex or discrimination on account of gender. Do you remember, in terms of interpreting the law or interpreting the Constitution, I had given you ERA as an example of one of them. Do you remember what that example was?
Oh wait, no.
Was it stare decisis? Was it original intent? Was it balancing?
Intent?
It was original intent. I had mentioned to you the idea that Equal Rights Amendment was basically dealing with opportunities and it was dealing with pay. And I had talked to y'all about the idea that women historically had been paid significantly less. And now I think we got to the point where it's up to about 78 cents for every dollar that a man earns. But if you look at the original intent, they were talking about economics. If you read the words, you could actually maybe use ERA to have legalized same-sex marriage had it passed. You could maybe legalize the idea that women should be able to fight and serve on the front lines in the military, because again, these would also be gender issues, but in fact, this was not necessarily what the original intent was.